My name is Evelyn Carter, and I was 28 when I learned that love does not always break loudly. Sometimes it breaks behind a half-closed door. Daniel Whitmore's birthday was supposed to be beautiful. I had planned it for weeks, maybe even months if I was honest with myself. He was turning 28, and I wanted him to feel celebrated in a way he would never forget. I chose his favorite Italian restaurant, the one with the dim amber lights, brick walls, and soft jazz playing low enough that people leaned closer when they spoke. I invited his closest friends, my parents, his mother, and the few relatives he had grown comfortable with over the years, including my cousin, Vanessa Reed. That detail would haunt me later. Daniel arrived thinking it was just dinner with me. When everyone shouted, "Surprise!" his face lit up in that boyish way that used to make my chest ache. He hugged me first, held me tight, and whispered, "You did all this?" I smiled and said, "You only turned 28 once." I had arranged everything. His favorite wine, a cake decorated with small silver stars because he always joked that he wanted to own the night sky. And hidden in my purse was the real gift, a luxury watch he had stared at through a boutique window 3 months earlier, pretending he didn't want it because of the price. But I remembered. That was the kind of girlfriend I was, the kind who remembered little things, the kind who loved carefully. The night began perfectly. Daniel laughed with his friends. My mother kept saying how handsome he looked. My father raised a toast to young love surviving real life. Vanessa sat across from us, smiling too brightly, touching her necklace every few minutes like she was nervous about something. I noticed it. I just didn't understand it yet. Right before the cake was supposed to come out, Daniel disappeared. At first, I thought he had gone to the restroom. Then 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I checked near the bar. Nothing. I stepped outside. Nothing. His phone went straight to voicemail. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. Like some quiet part of me had been waiting for the truth to finally stop hiding. I walked down the narrow hallway near the restrooms. At the very end was a service corridor, and beside it, a small coat room door stood slightly open. I heard a whisper. Then Daniel's voice. Then Vanessa's. I pushed the door open. They froze. Daniel had his hand on Vanessa's waist. Vanessa's fingers were curled into the front of his shirt. Their faces were close enough that I didn't need anyone to explain what had been happening. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Daniel stepped back, like distance could erase betrayal. "Evelyn," he said, breathless. "Wait!" Vanessa's face went pale. "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. It came out sharp and broken. "Then tell me what it is," I said. "Because from here, it looks like my boyfriend is hiding in a coat room with my cousin during his birthday party." Daniel dragged a hand through his hair. "It just happened." Those 3 words did something to me. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I made a horrible mistake." Just, it happened. As if betrayal were weather. As if it had blown through the room and neither of them had chosen to stand in its path. I looked at Vanessa. "Your family." Her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were for me or for herself. Daniel reached for my arm. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." "Evelyn, please," he said. "Can we talk somewhere private?" I glanced around the coat room. "This private enough for you?" He flinched. The party was still happening outside. People were laughing. Glasses were clinking. Somewhere beyond the hallway, a waiter was probably preparing to bring out the cake I had ordered with so much care. The cake with his name on it. The cake for the man who had just humiliated me 10 steps away from everyone I loved. I removed the small velvet box from my purse. Daniel saw it and swallowed. "What is that?" he asked, though I think he already knew. "Your gift," I said quietly. Or it was. I closed my fingers around it. Daniel's expression shifted. Panic, regret, calculation. That was when I knew this wasn't just a mistake. There was a whole story behind their faces, and I had only walked in during the final sentence. "I'm leaving," I said. Vanessa whispered, "Evelyn, please don't tell everyone like this." I turned to her slowly, and in that moment, I understood what she feared most. Not losing me, not hurting me, being exposed. I walked out without another word. I didn't go back to the table. I didn't explain. I didn't watch Daniel blow out candles or pretend I hadn't just seen my life split in half. I drove until the restaurant lights disappeared behind me. That night, I sat alone in a parking lot with the unopened watch box on the passenger seat, wondering how long Daniel had been lying. And worse, how many people had already known. The next morning, my phone looked like a battlefield. 23 missed calls from Daniel, 9 from Vanessa, 3 from my mother, and dozens of text messages layered on top of each other like bruises. Please let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen. You left before we could talk. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together. Every message carried the same desperate tone, but none of them answered the only question that mattered. How long? How long had they been sneaking around behind my back while I planned birthdays and memorized coffee orders and defended Daniel every time someone said he seemed emotionally distant? I ignored all of them. Around noon, my mother finally reached me through the house phone I almost never used. "Evelyn," she said carefully, "what exactly happened last night?" I laughed bitterly. "You already heard from Daniel, didn't you?" There was a pause. "A little." "Of course." I leaned against the kitchen counter and closed my eyes. I found him with Vanessa in the coat room at the restaurant. Silence. Then my mother sighed softly, the same way she sighed whenever someone spilled wine on expensive carpet. "That's unfortunate." Unfortunate. Not cruel. Not disgusting. Not heartbreaking. Just unfortunate. Something cold slid into my chest. "You sound more annoyed than shocked." "Evelyn," she replied, lowering her voice, "I think everyone is emotional right now." "Emotional?" I repeated. "Mom, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin at his own birthday party." "I know, sweetheart." But she didn't sound angry. That was the part I couldn't stop hearing. After we hung up, I sat in silence for nearly an hour. I kept replaying little moments I had ignored over the past few months. Vanessa laughing too hard at Daniel's jokes. Daniel texting late at night and tilting his phone away from me. The strange tension between them whenever they thought nobody was watching. It had all been there. I just trusted them enough not to look closer. That evening, Daniel showed up at the house. I saw him through the living room curtains before he knocked. His shoulders were tense, his hair messy, his face exhausted. For a second, seeing him hurt almost weakened me. Then I remembered Vanessa's hands on his chest. The knock came again. "Evelyn," he called softly, "please open the door." I stayed where I was. "I know you're inside." "And I know you lied to me," I answered. Silence. Then another knock, gentler this time. I made a mistake. I walked closer to the door, but didn't unlock it. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary," I said coldly. "You kissed my cousin while I was setting up your birthday cake." "It wasn't planned." That sentence snapped something inside me. "Stop saying that like it helps." Daniel exhaled shakily. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did." "I still care about you." I almost opened the door then. Not because I forgave him, but because some pathetic part of me still wanted to believe the man I loved existed somewhere underneath all this ugliness. Then he said the one thing that destroyed that hope. "Vanessa and we didn't mean for feelings to develop." Feelings. Not guilt. Not shame. Feelings. I stepped away from the door immediately. "You should leave." "Evelyn." "Go stay with Vanessa," I said. "You two clearly deserve each other." He stayed outside another 10 minutes before finally leaving. I thought that would be the worst conversation of the week. I was wrong. 2 days later, my parents asked me to come over. The second I walked into their dining room, I knew something was off. My father sat stiffly at the table, fingers interlocked. My mother paced near the window with nervous energy. It felt less like concern and more like an intervention. "Sit down," my father said. I remained standing. "Why do I feel like I'm about to get blamed for something?" My mother exchanged a glance with him. Then she said, "We've spoken to Daniel and Vanessa." There it was. I folded my arms. "And?" They admitted feelings had been building for a while. I stared at her. Actually stared. Because surely my own mother wasn't about to justify this. But she continued. "Nobody handled it correctly, but emotions are complicated. I laughed once in disbelief. You're kidding, Evelyn, my father said calmly. We're trying to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture, I repeated. The bigger picture is that my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin. My mother sat down across from me. We understand you're hurt. No, you clearly don't. What happened was wrong, she insisted quickly, but if Daniel and Vanessa truly have feelings for each other, destroying the entire family over it won't help anyone. For a moment, I genuinely thought I might black out from shock. Destroying the family? As if I were the problem. As if I had done something, except trust the wrong people. You want me to support this? I asked quietly. No, my father answered, but we want you to handle it maturely. I stared at him in disbelief. Maturely. My voice cracked on the word. Daniel betrayed me. Vanessa betrayed me. And somehow, I was being asked to protect everyone's comfort while mine was dragged through glass. My mother reached for my hand. Sweetheart, holding on to anger will poison you. I pulled away immediately. You know what poisons people? I whispered. Being betrayed by the people they love most. The room fell silent. Then my father sighed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. That sentence hit harder than the cheating itself. Because suddenly, everything became painfully clear. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting peace.
Image. Convenience.
They wanted family dinners to continue without discomfort. They wanted holidays without choosing sides. They wanted me to swallow humiliation quietly, so everyone else could stay comfortable. I stood up slowly. You know what's amazing? I said. Not one of you seems angry at them. That's not fair, my mother replied. No, I said. What Daniel and Vanessa did wasn't fair. I grabbed my bag. Evelyn, don't walk out like this, my father warned. I looked back at both of them, feeling something inside me finally harden. You already picked your side. Then I left. I cried in the car before I even reached the end of the street. Not because of Daniel. Not because of Vanessa. But because losing your family while they're still alive feels like mourning people who continue breathing without you. Later that night, my younger sister Louisa called me. The second I answered, she said, Mom and Dad are unbelievable. I laughed weakly through tears. So I'm not crazy? Absolutely not. Daniel and Vanessa are disgusting. Hearing someone finally say it out loud nearly broke me. Again. Louisa lowered her voice. Mom called me earlier, trying to explain their side. There's a side now? She thinks keeping the family together matters more than the betrayal. I wiped my eyes angrily. So I'm supposed to smile while my cousin dates my ex-boyfriend? No, Louisa said firmly. You're supposed to survive this. That sentence stayed with me long after we hung up. Because for the first time since the restaurant, I realized something terrifying. The cheating had only been the beginning. A week after everything collapsed, I finally started believing the silence might last. Daniel had stopped showing up at the house. Vanessa stopped calling. My parents limited themselves to stiff little messages, asking whether I was ready to talk calmly. As if calmness were the missing ingredient that could somehow make betrayal easier to digest. I threw myself into work instead. Long hours, extra projects, anything that kept my mind occupied long enough to avoid replaying the image of Daniel and Vanessa pressed together in that coat room. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Evelyn, please don't block this number too. We need to settle a few things. Daniel. I should have deleted it immediately. Instead, I read the next line and felt my entire body go cold. I think I should keep the watch. I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny. Because the audacity was almost artistic. The watch. The luxury watch I spent months saving for. The one I had bought to celebrate the man I thought I would build a future with. He wanted to keep it. After cheating on me. With my cousin. I stared at the message for nearly a full minute before tossing my phone onto the couch. Somewhere deep inside me, heartbreak shifted into anger. Not explosive anger. The dangerous kind. The quiet kind that sharpens itself carefully. I replied with only 3 words. Absolutely not, Daniel. He responded instantly. It was still a gift. I typed back before I could stop myself. It was a gift for my boyfriend. You stopped being him the moment you betrayed me. No answer came after that. But the next morning, I learned Daniel had moved into a small apartment across town. With Vanessa, Louisa told me reluctantly over coffee. I didn't want to upset you, she said carefully, stirring her drink. But I figured you'd rather hear it from me than someone else. I nodded slowly. Oddly enough, the news didn't destroy me the way I expected. Maybe because some part of me already knew. People don't destroy relationships that confidently unless they already have somewhere else to land. Louisa hesitated. Mom says they're trying to figure things out together. I rolled my eyes so hard, it hurt. Of course she does. Still, the watch issue kept bothering me. Not because of the money. Because of what it represented. Daniel wanted the reward without the responsibility, the memories without the guilt. He wanted to walk away from our relationship carrying expensive proof that someone once loved him completely. No, I wasn't letting him keep that. After a little digging online, I discovered Daniel had returned to work at the marketing firm downtown where he handled corporate clients. I remembered he sometimes stored personal items in his office locker, including gifts, including watches. So the next afternoon, I went there. The building lobby smelled like polished marble and expensive coffee. Rain streaked across the tall glass windows while employees moved through the halls, carrying laptops and exhaustion. I almost turned around twice before reaching the reception desk. But then I remembered my mother telling me to be mature. And suddenly, my spine straightened. Can I help you? The receptionist asked politely. I'm here to see Daniel Whitmore. She glanced at her computer. Do you have an appointment? No, I replied calmly, but trust me, he'll want to see me. A few minutes later, Daniel appeared near the elevators. The second he saw me, his face tightened. Evelyn? He looked tired, really tired. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, nervous posture. For one dangerous second, old instincts almost resurfaced. The instinct to ask if he was okay. I crushed it immediately. We need to talk, I said. His coworkers tried not to stare while pretending very hard not to listen. Daniel motioned toward a side hallway. Can we do this privately? I followed him into a small conference room. The moment the door shut, he exhaled heavily. You shouldn't have come here. And you shouldn't have asked to keep the watch. His jaw tightened. Evelyn, I already told you. You told me it was a gift, I interrupted. Funny thing about gifts, they're usually given after trust exists. You destroyed that before I even handed it to you. He rubbed his forehead. I didn't come up with feelings for Vanessa overnight. There it was again. Feelings. Always feelings. Never accountability. I stared at him in disbelief. Do you hear yourself? His voice lowered. I know I hurt you. No, I said quietly. I don't think you do. Silence settled heavily between us. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Finally, I held out my hand. The watch, Daniel. He looked away. You're seriously doing this? Yes. His expression hardened slightly. That's petty. I almost smiled. You cheated on me with my cousin during your birthday party. That's different. Is it? He crossed his arms defensively. Vanessa said you've been trying to punish us. Us. Not me and him. Them. The realization should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it simply confirmed what I already knew. He had already rewritten the story in his head. They were the misunderstood couple, and I was the bitter obstacle, refusing to disappear gracefully. I took a slow breath. I'm not punishing you, I said calmly. I'm reclaiming what never belonged to the version of you standing in front of me. For the first time since I entered the room, Daniel looked genuinely ashamed. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue again, then stopped. Without another word, he walked to the corner locker cabinet and unlocked it. When he turned back around, the watch box was in his hands. Seeing it made something ache inside my chest, because for one split second, I remembered myself buying it. Remembered the excitement, the love, the certainty. Daniel held the box out reluctantly. I took it carefully. That watch was supposed to celebrate someone I trusted, I said softly. That person doesn't exist anymore. He swallowed hard. Evelyn. But I was already walking toward the door. Behind me, his voice cracked slightly. I never meant for this to happen. I paused without turning around. You keep saying that, I whispered, but somehow it kept happening anyway. Then I left. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. I sat in my car for several minutes staring at the watch box in my lap. And slowly, for the first time in weeks, I realized something important. Getting the watch back didn't fix my heart, but it reminded me that I still belonged to myself. I sold the watch 2 days later. Not because I desperately needed the money, because I needed the memory gone. The jeweler examined it carefully beneath bright white lights, while I stood there pretending my chest didn't feel hollow. Barely worn, he commented. I almost laughed. Of course, it was barely worn. The relationship hadn't survived long enough for memories to settle into it. When he handed me the payment envelope, I didn't hesitate. I took the money and walked straight out into the cold afternoon air, feeling strangely lighter. Not healed. Just lighter. I used part of the money to finally replace my dying laptop and spent the rest on something completely irresponsible. A weekend trip to the coast by myself. Louisa called it my revenge vacation. I called it breathing room. But peace never lasted long around my family anymore. 3 nights after I sold the watch, my mother called again. I considered ignoring her. Instead, against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Her relief was immediate. Evelyn, thank goodness. What now? A pause. Then carefully, Daniel is upset about the watch. I leaned back against the couch cushions, slowly, almost impressed by how predictable everyone had become. He's upset? He said you humiliated him at work. I closed my eyes. Of course, that was the story now. Not Daniel humiliating me at his birthday dinner. Not Vanessa betraying her own cousin. Me reclaiming a watch. That was apparently the real tragedy. Mom, I said quietly, are you honestly calling to defend him again? I'm trying to stop things from getting uglier. They got ugly the moment he cheated. She sighed tiredly. You're holding on to too much anger. No, I replied calmly. I'm holding on to self-respect. Silence. Then she said something that stunned me more than anything before. Vanessa says you're trying to punish them because you can't accept the relationship. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. The relationship? Hearing it phrased that way made my stomach turn. Like they were some brave couple overcoming obstacles, instead of 2 selfish people who detonated a family. My mother lowered her voice. They care about each other. And what about me? I asked softly. That question hung there between us. Because finally, there was no comforting answer she could invent. I never stopped caring about you, she whispered. But it was too late for words like that. Caring means protecting people when they're bleeding. Not asking them to clean up quietly so nobody else feels uncomfortable. I need space from all of you, I said. Then I hung up. That weekend, I drove alone to the coast. The weather was gray and windy, the ocean restless beneath heavy clouds. I rented a tiny room overlooking the water and spent 2 days doing almost nothing. No family. No Daniel. No Vanessa. Just silence and waves. On the second night, I sat wrapped in a blanket beside the hotel window, watching rain smear across the glass, when my phone buzzed again. Louisa. You okay? She asked the second I answered. I think so. You sound calmer. I'm tired, I admitted. She hesitated before speaking again. There's something you should know. My stomach tightened instantly. What happened? Daniel and Vanessa are already fighting. I blinked. What? Apparently moving in together isn't as romantic as sneaking around behind your back. A bitter little laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Louisa continued carefully. Mom called me crying earlier because Vanessa came to the house complaining that Daniel's been distant and stressed. Interesting. Very interesting. The fantasy was cracking faster than I expected. What exactly did they think was going to happen? I murmured. Louisa snorted softly. People who build relationships on betrayal usually don't trust each other for very long. That sentence stayed with me after the call ended. Because she was right. Trust isn't magically reborn just because two dishonest people finally choose each other openly. And deep down, they both knew exactly what the other was capable of. Weeks passed. Then one evening, Daniel showed up at my door again. This time, he looked worse. Not guilty. Exhausted. I opened the door only halfway. What do you want? He shoved his hands into his pockets awkwardly. Can we talk? No. Please. I should have closed the door. Instead, curiosity held it open. Daniel looked down at the porch floor before speaking. Things with Vanessa aren't working. There it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. An announcement. As though I should care. I folded my arms. And? She's different now. I stared at him in disbelief. You mean the woman willing to betray her cousin turned out to be complicated? He flinched. For the first time, he genuinely looked embarrassed. I made a mistake. No, I said quietly. You made choices. He looked up at me then, eyes tired and desperate. I miss you. And for one terrifying moment, one tiny, dangerous moment, I remembered the version of him I once loved. The man who danced with me in the kitchen at midnight. The man who held my hand during thunderstorms. The man I thought would someday become my husband. But grief can wear familiar faces. That doesn't make it safe to invite back inside. You don't miss me, I said softly. You miss who I was willing to be for you. His expression collapsed. I never stopped loving you. I shook my head slowly. People who love you don't destroy you and then ask for understanding afterward. He opened his mouth again, but I stepped back. I deserved loyalty when you still had me. Then I closed the door. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just finally. That night, I stood alone in my kitchen, listening to the silence settle around me. And for the first time since the birthday dinner, it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. Because losing Daniel had hurt. Losing my family's trust had hurt even more. But losing myself trying to forgive people who never protected me, that would have hurt forever. And I was finally done choosing pain just to keep other people comfortable.